Hi, I'm Cameron, and I don't just read comics, I love them, and welcome back to another episode of Cameron Reads Comics. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about Action Comics Superman by Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Here we go. Okay, so this run that I'm reading collects mostly Action Comics 1029 to 1060 with a couple specials in between. Spoiler alert off the top, I loved this run. So for accessibility, this run is incredibly accessible. It hosts a lot of Superman's super family surrounding supporting cast. Steel, Supergirl, Superboy Connor Kent, everyone. And a couple new members as well. It helps if you know some of their stuff, but it doesn't hinder the story if you don't know it at all. Also, the big arc from this story is Superman Warworld. And that takes, from my understanding, a lot of beats and cues from Superman the Exile, that story from the 80s. It's a classic Superman story. I haven't read it. I think it would help to have some of that context, but I didn't know it and I did just fine. So you can do just fine too. Again, it's helpful to know, doesn't keep you from understanding the story. And then lastly, where this story kind of takes place in continuity is right after Brian Michael Bendis' Superman Action Comics run, and then it goes through Tom Taylor's Son of Kal-El Superman run. This is the Action Comics run while that's happening, and then when Tom Taylor leaves that book and Josh Williamson picks up Superman, this is also simultaneously happening there. So that's where this story is living. I have read all of those runs, and I'm kicking myself because this one was the best of all of them. Joshua Williamson Superman is still ongoing, but for the first two, this is the best Superman run we've had in a long time. Okay, for the story, Phillip Kennedy Johnson is not a writer that I had read before. I just heard a lot of hype about this story online. I just wanted to see if I could crack this open and get into it and see if it lived up to the hype. Long story short, it very much did. This is my favorite Superman ongoing series that I've read in a very long time. I read all through Bendis. I read, the Tom Taylor stuff. Probably Bendis is when I started picking up Superman, but that doesn't mean I wasn't reading the arcs in between. I felt like this run was actually written for me. I wanted some stories with Mongul, Cyborg Superman, and Steel, and all the other characters in his family. Very much, you can see the influence of Death of Superman and the Triangle Comics era that had on this run, and that's what I want. I love Steel. I love the supporting Superman cast, and I just kind of wanted some moments with them, and I got them. I love Metallo, Cyborg Superman, Mongul. Those are three of my favorite Superman villains, and so to just get a run where they are shining and it's boom, 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 great. All the heavy hitters that I wanted, it was done very, very well. So the major arc of this story is the Warworld saga. It begins because Warworld warships come to attack Earth, and Superman stops them, which makes him meet a character at the beginning, Thao La, a Warzone who is the enslaved race on Warworld, with chains on her hands. And Phillip Kennedy Johnson explores this idea that, everyone is wearing chains from Warworld. The Warzones are wearing chains, and not as a sign of imprisonment, but as a sign of honor. Everyone starts out with one chain. And for every person you kill in battle, you get another chain, which gives you more and more freedom. And they use these chains as weapons, and they're a great symbol of pride. But the thing that he does, I think, amazing with the character of Superman is he meets this woman in chains, and he tries to break them off, and she's so defensive, and she doesn't want that. And so there's this longing in Clark that he's I just want to take these chains off them, which is such an instinctual Superman thing. Character beat, which I loved. So then, that leads Superman to go to Warworld. And that's when that picks up. I just want to give you the beginning. I want you to really read the Warworld saga because it is awesome. Phillip Kennedy Johnson emphasizes Superman as a symbol of hope. And he just does a freaking great job as a symbol of hope. And he also demonstrates the symbol of Superman. Like, what does Superman mean to others? What kind of, like, what does the S mean? What can it mean? How can it drive other people? How can it break chains? You know, it's really great. I think it's perfect. So he does that. He fights Mongul there, and even just like all the language they use. It's also like, I want to make it clear too. I think probably when it was going on, it maybe went on too long, the arc. But as a trade, I just was voraciously reading that arc and that run. So it's a big, dense thing, but honestly, I think it's a super light read, and the art is amazing too. But then he eventually has to come back to Metropolis, and that is when we have our first our two arcs with Metallo and Cyborg Superman. Superman gets back to Metropolis, and he goes up against Metallo with his new team, and Cyborg Superman comes along, and I love it, and they all fight, and the art is amazing, and it's so good, and like probably the best single Metallo arc I've ever read, which is not a sentence I get to say often, because I think, number one, he's an underused character. Number two is he's not very, no pun intended, fleshed out. So they just went into like Metallo and make kind of the idea that like he has become a gun, and it was really, really good. And then Cyborg Superman does some very gnarly stuff, and it's great. I don't want to spoil it because I want you guys to all read this. And then there's another new villain known as the Blue Earth. The Blue Earth is a cult that pops up in Metropolis and is very anti-alien. So when Superman returns, like after like saving all these alien races, he comes to Metropolis, and there's a whole movement that's anti-Krypton, anti-alien. And that's what the Blue Earth cult is. They were really interesting characters. I liked them a lot. That leads into the final arc, and it's pretty good. Okay, there's also just some new characters, and I just want some new members added to the Superman family. They are Osel Ra and Othel Ra. They are two Warzone children who are from Krypton. I forgot how it kind of works, but they are Kryptonians. Superman takes them in, and he gives them a home in Metropolis with them. So they're the super twins, and they're great. It's kind of like the Fantastic Four currently, where you have Joe Venn and Nicola, who are Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters' children, who are alien and just trying to learn the ways of the Earth, and they want to be warriors. That's kind of like Osel Ra and Otha Ra. They're really great. So, great addition. I feel like it'll be very easy to see them disappear into the background of the stories, and I don't want that, but just two great additions. We were missing a younger member. After John Kent moved up, we were missing a younger member of the super family, and now we got two. So that's good. Okay, for the art of this run, the art is absolutely fantastic, and every single artist was great, but we didn't have a single consistent artist. We had three. First, Daniel Sampere. I love Daniel Sampere. I'm obsessed with him. He is one of the greatest working artists. Currently on Wonder Woman with Tom King. I think he started on this run of Action Comics, and every page he did was perfect. Everything he touches turns to gold. I adore him. I met him. He's a very nice man. He did probably my favorite Mongul cover. I loved his art in this so much that when I met him, I requested a Superman sketch. Coming back from CGC soon. He was on the first half of the Warworld stuff, and he did some covers. He absolutely crushed it. I think what happened was it was working out so well for him on here that they asked him to do Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then he had to go do that. But his art was amazing, dynamic, perfect, just awesome. He did a great job. And then next up after him was actually kind of like a big departure. Sometimes they keep it in the same wheelhouse, and sometimes they don't. This time they didn't. Riccardo Federici, very much like an Esad Ribic, hyper-realistic, painted panels. Picked up a wild departure, but really great. Very much a classic artist. I think he would be a great, if he hasn't already done it, I think he'd be great on like a Conan book. Very, very great artist, and draws like a scary Mongul. He picked up the second half of the Warworld and the beginning of the Metropolis stuff. Some of his stuff with Metallo was just gnarly. It's so realistic, and there's so much detail in his work. It's amazing. And then lastly, the last artist is he just did House of Brainiac, and now he's gonna go be doing Absolute Superman. Is Rafa Sandoval. I love Rafa Sandoval. I think he's so underrated. Him and Daniel Sampere are very similar, very much in the same lane. He closes out the run, and he does so exceptionally. He's still on the title currently, and it's just amazing. I think he draws some of the most dynamic panels, some of the page layouts. The way he draws motion is just fantastic. I really love everything he brings to the Superman table, and I'm glad these were the three artists on here. Everyone did such a great job. I just loved it. Very much go read for yourself. And now for my rating. I am rating the story a 9.7 out of 10. This is everything that a Superman run should be, from my opinion. If you want to know how I feel about Superman, look no further than Phillip Kennedy Johnson's run, which is soon to be collected in an omnibus. So pick up that. If not, just go pick up the Warworld saga and then read a bunch of the trades. It's just super awesome. My name's Cameron. I don't just read comics. I love them. I'll see you next time.